This kid, his only birthday wish was to spend Christmas with his mother.
Your child is nowhere to be found. Your mind just goes crazy. What could have happened?
His dad has kidnapped me before.
I know who would have the best chance of taking that boy. It's you. Listen to me.
I love my boy. I love all babies.
I love you, baby. Don't give up. We're looking for you.
Within minutes, FBI is mobilized.
Look at it.
It really takes a monster to do something like that.
I don't think any of us had any idea what kind of evil was perpetrated.
Houston, Texas, America's fourth largest city. I served as a homicide detective with Houston's finest for over 23 years. I've investigated over 400 murders and solved 90% with a confession. Once I have a suspect in the room, I don't quit until I get justice for the victims. I am homicide detective Phil Waters.
I'm a father. I have a son, and this case involves a child. I knew this was going to be tough. There is a cacophony of questions going on in my head. What do we need to do? What did we not do that we should have done? And when does this happen? Around the most joyous time of the year, Christmas, where families are gathering together.
My nephew Jonathan came to live with us in 2005 at the age of 6. My sister Angela was not able to handle him or life, so we told my mom that we would be happy to take him and raise him in our family.
Angela had had a rough past with relationships and the different men in her life, and some financial troubles.
Raising 3 boys as is wasn't any different than raising 4. Jonathan would be the first person to come and give you a hug and say, "Hey, Uncle Glenn, how was your day?" Jonathan was living with us for 5 years until he turned 12. His wish for his birthday was to go and live with his mom here in Houston and spend that next Christmas with her.
In November 2010, his mother, Angela, had been doing better. She had had a new husband and she had a good job. I remember taking him to the airport to send him on the plane to Houston.
Jonathan told us that he loved us and was going to miss us.
On Christmas Eve, Angela was working at a specialty food store as a cashier. Her job was only a couple of minutes from where she lived. Her last words to Jonathan before leaving the house is, "Don't answer the door. If you need anything, give me a call."
Sometime that afternoon, the manager received a phone call from Jonathan, and he is asking to speak to his mom. They're telling him, "Honey, I'm sorry, she cannot come to the phone. She's very busy." And he's insistent, "I need to speak to my mom." Jonathan did have a sense of urgency that did alarm her. And then the line goes dead.
By the time Angela got to the phone, there was nobody there, and so Angela had tried to call back.
He did not answer. I know that she tried to call him several times.
Angela got out of there as quickly as possible and headed towards the house. She was only about half a block away.
Angela rushes in and finds this empty apartment. There's a video game still on the TV. Nothing is disturbed except
There's no Jonathan.
she starts looking around the neighborhood trying to figure out where he must have gone. And Angela calls the police.
On Christmas Eve 2010, missing persons detectives are called in, and their initial report was he may have run away.
He's a 12-year-old kid. He could have just wandered off to play basketball or snuck off to play video games.
Police say they're looking for any clue that may lead them to the little boy. An Amber Alert's been issued, and detectives want everyone to be on the lookout for him.
It was heartbreaking. And it really sort of captured everyone's attention at holiday time that a 12-year-old would just evaporate.
I received the call on Christmas Day that he was missing. All that went through our minds was, where's my nephew? Where's Jonathan?
Just kind of get thrown into a whirlwind. It's just not normal. Angela appeared on television distraught. You know, she pleads with the community, find her son, Jonathan.
I pray for the best. I don't even think that there's a worst.
Angela, gets in touch with EquiSearch. And Houstonians know that when EquiSearch is involved, then it's a serious, serious case. Everyone takes notice.
EquiSearch is a search and recovery group. Volunteers just come out of the woodwork. Everybody wants to help, especially the day after Christmas. I was saying 100 to 200 people. If Jonathan was still alive, we were determined we would find him.
It was packed. There were reporters and cameras and volunteers out the door. There were too many people to fit in the church.
We started where Jonathan was going missing. There was an abandoned apartment complex. We spread out to the abandoned fields, all the empty lots in those areas. We were looking in barrels, ditches, dumpsters. No one had seen him. It was just like he just disappeared.
After the third day, my partner Brian Harris and we received a call to meet missing persons detectives. We know that after 48 hours, the results are not going to be good ones.
This was definitely a situation that my gut was telling me it wasn't going to end well. At the makeshift command post set up by Texas EquiSearch, everybody we needed to talk to was essentially there at that church.
We're playing catch up at this point. The missing person detective is speaking with Norma Suarez, who is the manager of the meat market that Angela Davis, Jonathan Foster's mother, works.
"2:05. The phone rang. It was her son. He said that he needed to talk to his mom. I looked out and I seen we had a line. And I said, there's no way I can get her. I'm hearing another lady background.
Was there anything distinctive about her voice?
She was kind of angry. I said, look, ma'am, I'm trying to help you. She said, I don't give up.
Mm-hmm.
She said some dirty words.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell us exactly what she said?
And she didn't give a
Our spidey senses were tingling. Something wasn't right about this case.
And all we know at that point is that a woman with an angry voice might have Jonathan. On Christmas Eve 2010, 12-year-old Jonathan Foster has been reported missing from his home.
Detectives with HPD think someone snatched him from this Northwest Houston neighborhood.
After the third day of Jonathan missing, we were all hoping and praying that Jonathan would be found alive. At this point in the investigation, Brian and I are behind the 8 ball. So we want to first talk to the most immediate family members. We make a decision, bring Jonathan's mother, Angela Davis, and his grandmother, Mary Gifford, to homicide for interviews.
They get you something to eat?
Very good gumbo.
Unfortunately, from the very beginning of the interview with Angela, it was quite clear that she was much too distraught, much too confused, that was going to prevent a coherent interview from taking place.
Your child is nowhere to be found. Your mind just goes crazy. I don't think you're ever prepared to be faced with a situation like that.
I interviewed Angela. Brian was going to interview Mary.
I sat down with Mary, the grandma. Tell me about Jonathan. Tell me about Angela.
Why do they call it homicide?
Okay. When it's clear and obvious that the kid ran away from home, we would not be called. But we get called when there seems to be evidence that there's a kidnapping or some kind of foul play.
Okay, it's not because y'all think he's dead.
No. Okay. Best way for us to have a relationship is that I'm straightforward with you, so if the worst case scenario happens, I'll let you know. Okay? Mary said that Angela had a lot of problems in her history.
Angela has this thing. Breaking up, going back, breaking up, going back, breaking up, going back.
She had struggled with questionable partners in her life. Jonathan's father, he was not a very good person.
His name is Richard Holden Foster. There were several times I would rescue her from Richard.
Mary tells this story to me about Jonathan's young life. I was about blown away.
Richard has kidnapped Jonathan before and run off with him to get Angela and come back to him.
What did he do when he took Jonathan?
I'm in my bedroom. All of a sudden, here comes Jonathan just running into my room and runs behind me real quick. Next thing I know, Richard's barged his way in and he grabbed Jonathan from behind me. There was this little table there and Jonathan hit his little head on it. And then he grabs him and takes off.
Richard was eventually tracked down to a field where they actually found him asleep. That was the beginning of his criminal career.
He's been handled for harboring a runaway. He's been charged with burglary of a habitation. And he's been charged with making terroristic threats.
God, the more I talk about this man, the more I think maybe he got him.
We need to find Richard Foster. We find out that Richard Foster is currently living in Corsicana, Texas, which is an hour or so south of Dallas. Because of this particular case, a missing child, we take the resources from the FBI to locate Richard Foster.
Within minutes, the FBI is able to find him.
Richard Foster explains, look, I haven't seen Jonathan in years. I was nowhere near Houston, Texas. I've been here.
The FBI is able to alibi him out. They're able to prove there's physically no way Richard Foster was in Houston, that he could have physically himself done the kidnapping. They were able to completely clear Richard Foster.
Brian and I are both fathers. Finding this child is paramount. We learned that Angela had married again.
That previous Easter, before Jonathan was abducted, Angela had married Jonathan's stepfather, David Davis.
We had seen David at the church where Xmas was setting up. We had seen him in sound bites with the media.
He came across as being mature, and a key word here, a stabilizing factor in Angela's life, therefore would be a positive influence on Jonathan. And the grandmother, she thought that was true as well.
They were getting along good. Jonathan wants a daddy.
Sure.
He wants to be with his mama, but he wants a daddy too. He asked David before he even really got to know David, would you be my daddy?
But David Davis was not happy that Jonathan came to live with Angela. David even said that Jonathan was a pest and was getting in the way of Angela and David's relationship.
And then I get a phone call from my daughter saying she's moving in with Sharon because David had slapped Jonathan and knocked him to the floor.
Angela said, "You are not going to touch my child." She wanted to keep her child safe, and she needed to leave quickly, and Sharon opened her doors to her.
Strangely enough, 12 days later, Jonathan's missing.
Is this motive? Did Jonathan's stepfather kidnap him? Did Jonathan's stepfather kill him?
So, in my most charming way, I asked David to come with me to homicide, and I would like to talk to him. He was more than a willing participant, almost too willing.
Alrighty.
What I found out quickly is that David Davis liked to talk.
I believe he's out there. I believe he'll be found. And whoever's got him, let him go and let him come home, please.
A desperate plea from Jonathan Foster's grandmother, Mary Gifford.
It was apparent that Jonathan Foster's stepfather, David Davis, was exhibiting a little bit of jealousy because the attention that he had been given from Angela was now shared with Jonathan, despite the impassioned pleas to the media.
I love my boy. I love all babies.
My observations of David Davis at the church, the media, and from Angela, he was overly concerned about Jonathan's welfare with no degree of sincerity. It was now time to talk to David.
Let's go back here to the 14th. What Angela says is that you and Jonathan had some sort of a conflict and that you hit Jonathan.
He's really a crybaby, whatever, so he told his mom that I smacked him. Doesn't act like a 12-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
He acts a lot younger. We never slap a child across the face.
Listen to me. I married a woman who had 2 children, so I was stepfather for a while. I understand the complexities of a mixed family.
Right.
Believe me.
Yeah, trying to. I didn't have so much with him. I mean, it's her.
Well, right.
She flies off the wall.
What I first noticed about David, he likes to deflect and say absolutely nothing.
You popped him. Now, whether you slapped him, whether you docked his hat, whether whatever you did, it's irrelevant. The point was, you laid hands on her 12-year-old little boy. She didn't like it. She says, "I'm leaving you. Divorce is the only answer." And she goes down to Sharon's.
Anytime she gets mad, she does it. She's done it 4 times.
Okay.
David denies there was any type of animosity towards Jonathan, that he grew to love Jonathan and wanted to be a good father to him.
And I went out and bought him a new electric scooter, bought him a bicycle, and, I helped him with his homework.
What I thought was most interesting, I cannot remember at any point during this interview with him where he ever said Jonathan's name. But what was most important to me was the timeline. Start with Christmas Eve and tell me where you were, what you did.
And it was about 1:30. I said I'd go check on him and see how excited he was for Christmas. I knocked on the door. Who is it? It's his dad. He peered out the window just to check, He's just all excited to see me about Christmas. He's playing a game on the computer.
And he asked you if you wanted to play?
Mm-hmm.
And did you?
No.
I'm not buying that for 1 minute. Now all of a sudden, he's so excited to see Davis. Now he wants him to play video games with him. I cannot imagine Jonathan, in any way, shape, or form, he would ask David Davis to come in and play video games.
I just so wish that I had stayed and played that game with him.
David said that he went inside only for a few minutes.
So you hugged him and told him to sit tight, see him in a little bit. He closed and locked the door behind you.
Yeah, I was just breaking my heart, and I'm the last one that's on.
Phil is picking up Mr. Davis. Feels very guilty. He keeps on saying, I might have been the last one to see Jonathan. And so that stands out.
What time did you leave?
I think it was about like 10 till.
10 till
2.
2?
Yeah. I heard him deadbolt that door.
David eventually said, I've got to go get your mom because we're going to go Christmas shopping.
She wanted to go get a coffee grinder. The parking lot was full, and it might be a little later before she got out. So I figured I could run up and get the coffee grinder first. Well, I headed up to CVS, and they didn't have one.
I did not find David's story believable. They were split up. He was going to go out last minute Christmas shopping with Angela, and they weren't even together.
Which CVS did you go to?
Right there at the corner.
What kind of car you drive?
Mercedes. Old Mercedes. Like a yellow looking color.
Okay. So when we go pull the videos from the CVS, we're going to see your car there.
I didn't park or anything. I pulled up like I was going in, and I didn't go in. I said,
but you pulled into the parking lot. Did you actually go in the CVS?
No.
How did you know if they didn't have a coffee grinder if you didn't go in there?
Well, because I've been in there before looking for one.
He's telling these huge lies. I don't think he has an understanding ever that I'm not buying any of his bull crap. When he decides to shut down the operation of In Search of a Coffee Grinder, where does he go? Well, he goes to the bar. I know that's where I would go if I couldn't find a coffee grinder. It's time to hit a beer, right? Time to get a drink.
So you're actually at the bar when Angela calls you, frantic?
Yes.
And she's frantic about what?
She said, I can't find Jonathan. I said, what do you mean? I said, I was just there a couple minutes ago. So I'm like, oh, great, another drama, because I was sure that he was just like next door or something, you know. And I had about a half a beer left, and so I finished my beer.
Certainly gives me an idea about his character. Jonathan is missing, and this boy that he says calls him Dad is not near as concerning to him as finishing that beer that he just bought.
He waits a couple of hours. By now, Angela is going door to door looking for her son.
If I was trying to come up with a person who would have the best chance of taking me to Jonathan, it's you. Listen to me.
Never have nothing to do with it. You can tell me all you want, sir.
Listen
I
to
would
me,
not
David.
do nothing to hurt that
Listen
baby.
to me.
Nothing.
Listen to me.
He sheds no tear. Other than this feigning concern, he is void of any kind of emotion. So the concern comes across as being hollow.
Look at me. I want you to understand this. And you're sitting here now putting on this show for me to cover your own ass? That all this business about how much you love Jonathan and how much you love Angela, it's all because the only person that you love is yourself.
You know exactly what happened to Jonathan. You know exactly who the woman is on that phone. And you know where Jonathan is right now.
All roads are leading to you. I mean, there's just no dispute in it.
Well, I can't find him. I wouldn't do nothing to that boy. He can scream at you, blue in the face, whatever. I didn't do anything to hurt him.
Phil Waters has a heart as big as Texas, but I'll tell you what, he is as tenacious as they come.
It's Christmas, for crying out loud. She's left you because she believes that you slapped the crap out of Jonathan. So here's Jonathan again in the middle of your marriage.
You can talk to me all night, officer. You know what? And I'll swear in the Bible, polygraph me.
If we find Jonathan and he tells us you enticed him to leave with you, your goose is cooked, man.
I will swear in the Bible, I'll take a polygraph, and I will look until I find that boy.
I've had folks swear on their baby's eyes, and I'm like, oh, please don't do that, because what you're swearing to is obviously false. But I'm going to take him up on his offer. He wants to take a polygraph. And you know what? Detective Phil can make that happen. I'm going to go out and try to verify his timeline. I find that there's no video at the CVS. I'm going to go to the bar.
Fortunately for David, he went to a bar that had video surveillance. And he stayed at that bar for hours. And while he was at that bar, he made phone calls.
The results of the polygraph that David took showed deception. That leads me to believe that he may somehow be involved. So my question is he in contact with the woman on the phone? The person that we believe has Jonathan in their possession.
Everyone's still looking for Jonathan, his family, Texas Equisearch, and the police. Investigators spent the afternoon with Jonathan's mom, Angela Davis, and his stepdad, David Davis.
Little fella, I love you. I love you, baby. Don't give up. We're looking for you.
It's Christmas holiday 2010, and we are still no closer to finding Jonathan Foster. My prime suspect, David Davis, it appears that he may have an alibi for the time that Jonathan Foster went missing.
Oh, they drilled me like I thought I was in Vietnam, baby. But, I know that's her job. It's you. They kept saying, I love my boy.
Upon checking David's apartment, we found that not the neatest guy, but there were no traces of Jonathan, and it didn't look like he had been there recently.
Canvassing Jonathan's neighborhood, we needed to know if Davis actually was the last one to see Jonathan. A neighbor says, I remember seeing a silver pickup truck in the driveway when Jonathan went missing. I remember a very burly black male wearing, I think, a ball cap and a white t-shirt. Now we got a vehicle. We have a black male that we got to find. Is this the person that took Jonathan?
As Brian and I are now running on fumes, we've gone way beyond 24 hours in this investigation straight. We're running out of time finding Jonathan alive. We're directed by our lieutenant to go home and get some sleep. I can tell you from experience, though, it's hard to sleep when we've got a 12-year-old missing boy.
My phone rings, and they said, we believe we found your missing person. I said, how do you know it's him? We're pretty sure, but it's bad.
A witness walking down the street sees a form in the ditch in the culvert, and her first impression is that it's a dead dog.
It was burned all the way around. There's no way to even determine whether this person was a boy, was a girl. That body was so badly charred. It was horrifying.
My mother calls me and tells me that they found a body, but they don't know if it's Jonathan. I was hoping and praying that it was not him.
That body was 12-year-old Jonathan Foster. I don't think any of us had any idea what kind of evil was perpetrated on this young boy.
Jonathan was identified by his dental records. His manner of death was ruled as homicidal violence. The medical examiner was not able to determine the actual cause of death. Jonathan was alive when he was taken because his hands were found bound behind his back.
It was like the world fell away. This little 12-year-old boy was murdered, rolled up in a piece of carpet and burned, and then thrown into a ditch on the side of the road. just discarded like it was nothing.
It felt almost like an elephant was sitting on my chest. And then I had to sit my children down and tell them. That was one of the hardest things as a parent to do.
Now, the question in our mind was, what kind of a monster would do something like this to a 12-year-old little boy?
Detectives notice in a distance a camera on the side of an industrial building, and they're able to get the video. And what they see in that video looks like a silver pickup truck with some distinctive bumper stickers in the back window. And then we see a big burly person manhandling what is believed to be a garbage can, dumping Jonathan as if he is a piece of trash.
Jonathan's grandmother said without a shadow of doubt, the owner of that vehicle is Mona Nelson.
Everyone suspected it was the stepfather, David Davis. Who's Mona Nelson?
Mona Nelson was a former maintenance worker at an apartment complex, maybe a half a block away from Sharon's duplex. Sharon and Mona had been drinking buddies. They were friends.
Sharon invited Mona Nelson to celebrate Christmas with them as well.
Sharon said, "It's going to be a little boy there named Jonathan. He's not going to let you in. You just tell him his Aunt Sharon said it's okay, and I'll be home in a couple of hours." But the witness was thinking it was a male, now we have a female. Light clothing, well, a lot of people wear light clothing. We were nervous about it, but you gotta go with what you have. You gotta go with what you've been dealt.
What is interesting is that Mona, from a distance, resembled a man. The next step is we want to talk to Mona Nelson and see if she's the woman on the phone.
The big question everyone wants answered is, could a close family friend kill a 12-year-old boy?
On December 28, 2010, 12-year-old Jonathan Foster was found brutally murdered just a few miles from his home.
There's no more Christmases. They're done for this family.
It was heartbreaking. It really takes a monster to do something like that.
We now have a prime suspect, and her name is Mona Nelson.
She was a professional boxer, even fought Muhammad Ali's kid. She had a checkered history herself. She was a coyote, somebody who transport illegal immigrants across the border, and they get paid for it.
Hello, Mona.
We have decided that we're going to conduct this interview as a two-man interview, and we're going to alternate. We have to be careful not to interrupt.
My partner, Phil. I'm
How you doing? Nice to meet you.
When did you see the little boy last?
I got to house around 12:30, 1 o'clock. Knocked on the door, and Jonathan told me that Sharon's not home.
Okay, she has now put herself there, not just the witness. So the difference that we have is the timing. We're banking on the witness's time frame rather than hers.
You're at Sharon's house at around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, because that witness across the street sees you go into Sharon's house. He sees you come out. He sees Angela come up right after you've pulled off.
I did not harm that little boy. I wouldn't do it.
It's the non-custodial interview that amazed me the most, because they can leave at any time. They don't have to take it, but they do. So why? Perhaps they believe they're smarter than us. Were you ever in the Marines or anything? Service?
No.
Just a boxer and a machinist? Is that what you are?
I weld and I do roofing.
Mona was a licensed welder.
And that's when it snapped. She tried to get rid of the evidence. I'm a dumbass when it comes to stuff sometimes. About welding, what kind of torch is that? Where you light it on fire?
Cutting torch.
Well, that's pay dirt right there. Now we've got her to make an admission about her welding and the use of an acetylene torch, which is what we believe was used on Jonathan's body.
If you were going to roast me, what's the motion you'd have to use?
I don't know. I've never tried to cut anything besides metal with it.
What would happen if you took that and went on my skin and held it there?
It would burn.
There's no real emotion about the loss of this boy, Jonathan. I'm going to pull up the actual picture of what I believe she did to this boy. Would it burn like that, though?
Oh, my God.
Look at it.
Oh, my God. That's Jonathan?
Yes.
That's sad. He didn't deserve that.
It's more than sad. Sad doesn't even begin to define that. That's evil, is what that is. Jonathan didn't deserve it, didn't ask for it.
We discussed the video that we get from the industrial area where Jonathan's body is dumped.
How do we explain your truck being caught on camera?
I don't know. That I don't know.
Mona, let's cut the BS. All right?
My truck was with me all day, and I was not on Hardy Street.
It's her truck, it's her, and she's wearing the same clothes that she wore when she dumped Jonathan Foster's body in that ditch.
What does a team of detectives find? She had an acetylene torch. She had a garbage can with some leaves that look eerily similar to the leaves that were under Jonathan's body. And then at the bottom of that trash can was a child's sweatshirt that would fit a 12-year-old boy. And we turn around and we tell Mona, you are under arrest for capital murder of Jonathan Foster. You are no longer free to go. She looks at me and she says, I'm not a monster, you know. I simply say, could have fooled me. And then she says, I want to explain to you what happened.
I was headed up towards Shepherd Street, and David flagged me down. And he asked me, you have a truck? I need to move some stuff.
What does she confess to? Driving the truck, having a garbage can, going to the location on Hardy Toll Road, dumping something, but then she says Davis is with her?
She is simply telling us a set of details that adds David Davis into the play.
David says to pull in here. I jump out, manhandle it like here, and it goes over. I didn't harm Jonathan, and I had no idea that that was Jonathan.
She's not admitting anything about ever seeing Jonathan. She's trying to convince us that the person we see in the video isn't her, that it's David.
On the video, there is no sign of another person in that car.
No way was David Davis involved in this. And David Davis's saving grace was being at a bar that had video surveillance.
It is Mona in her white welding cap and her white t-shirt. Mona Nelson was charged with capital murder.
My theory of what happened is Sharon invites Mona to come to the house. Sharon said, Jonathan is there. Tell him that I said it was okay for you to wait there until I get home. Nobody tells this to Jonathan.
The door was locked, and Jonathan said, she's not here, and he wouldn't let her in.
Jonathan had been admonished very heavily by his mother. Do not let anyone in when we're not here.
We know that Jonathan places a phone call to his mother's workplace. So much time has passed, by the time Angela gets to the phone, there's nobody there.
Mona gets aggressive with that child, perhaps punches him in the chest, and then it's too far gone. She knows that the mother is on the way. She just takes the kid because she doesn't want to get in trouble.
because of his hands being tied behind his back, that he may have been laid in a place where he suffocated. And then once that occurred, the next thought in Mona's mind is, holy crap, I have got to get rid of this body.
I'm praying that Jonathan died before she tried to get rid of the body by burning it with that acetylene torch. Any other scenario, I can't even imagine the torture that that young boy went through.
And that's the horrible, horrible reality of what we see and what we know.
She burned him with this torch at her house on that road. The evidence leads to one person only, and that is Mona Nelson.
Now, with both sides done, the judge will decide Nelson's future.
Phil Waters and Brian Harris honestly were responsible for solving this case. Mona admitted that she was the person who was dumping the body. Without that, this would have been a much, much more difficult case.
We want to remember Jonathan as the wonderful boy, so willing to help anyone. I feel that with us, he had a wonderful childhood, as short as it was.
I had this tattoo made after Jonathan had passed away. Butterflies, for me, symbolize a loved one. And it has Jonathan's initials in it, JP, which is what we called him. When I think of Jonathan today, I think of his smile. That's one thing that I wish I could see again, would be just his smile.
Looking back over this case, Mona Nelson ranks right up there with some of the most heartless, cold-blooded killers that I've ever dealt with. What kind of a mind can do something like that to a 12-year-old little boy whose only birthday wish was to spend Christmas with his mother?